Today I have here with me John Dawson. John Dawson and I have known each other since, well, I was a late teenager, and I think you were probably in your early 20s, John, when we first met. Would that be right? Somewhere around there?
So, no, a little bit later. 1985, I think.
Was it 1985?
Okay.
Yeah. And I met John as he arrived as a pupil with my father, who was a spiritual teacher, Abdullah Dugan. And so we came to, to get to know each other quite well as a result of that interaction. And together we were students within the school in New Zealand. And John's going to talk about his aspects of his journey and also his own work, like his work that he's doing, where he's a coach and a counsellor to business people in New Zealand, and a healer and many other interesting things as well. I was being a family man, married to my sister Janine. And so John, if you could just introduce yourself and talk freely, talk about your journey, talk about where you're going and what you see happening.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess coming into contact with Islam, really, it was in Pakistan in 1982 when I was 23 or 4, travelling and wanting to find out more about that. And I came back to New Zealand because it really didn't make a lot of sense back in a New Zealand context. And that led me to one of the books by Abdullah Dugan, which was in the library, and had me, eventually come into contact with him. One of the things that he said to me pretty early on in the piece was, when I was searching around for what kind of job I should be doing, was that I should be a teacher. And so after a false start, because I went away and did my own thing with computers, which was so not me, became a teacher in high school. And that really set me on a path to working with people. And in some ways, it's kind of set me up for what I do now in a lot of ways. So yeah, I've done a variety of things in between then. But largely my work is with business people, but it's I guess you'd call it organisational development work. There is one-on-one coaching involved. There's quite a lot of consulting. I've learned to do everything from the real practical nuts and bolts around process improvement and change, strategic planning kind of stuff, just how to sort out a business that's not doing well, that's poorly led, right through to helping people with how they can communicate more effectively, build better relationships. And I do quite a lot of conflict resolution work too. So act as a mediator and help people resolve their own conflicts and reach more considerate and effective ways of working with one another. So it's kind of morphed a lot over the years. I've been self-employed doing my own thing as a consultant for about 15 years now. And more the focus has been, particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, has been much more around giving back. I'm much more interested in helping people learn how to do this for themselves and rely on someone like me coming in to kind of do it for them, to them. So I'm focusing a lot more on trying to help people work more facilitatively, work more exploratively, and those things really rely on fundamentally people being able to be present in themselves so that they can connect with others around them, and create some kind of understanding between themselves by listening deeply rather than actively, or not listening at all. By learning how to ask explorative questions and be inquisitive and inquiring about stuff. And yeah, to want to understand how someone else is feeling, to notice things within themselves that arise rather than having to think everything from here, but just notice all the other messages and information that they're getting from other places within themselves. And in that way, they can work together a lot more practically. They can cooperate more effectively. They can, I see on so many websites and office walls and companies' values boards that we practice collaboration. And, I'm yet to see many senior managers and executives, let alone their staff, who they're supposed to be showing how to do this, what true collaboration is. I still hear things like, we need to work more collaboratively. So you three get in a room over there and collaborate and get more creative. Get more creative. There's no creativity without people being able to communicate effectively, trusting one another, being vulnerable enough to let out their ideas, and learning how to discuss and weigh up options and try things out and explore widely. So, I guess at this stage of my career, now that I'm in my early 60s, it's not that I see myself stopping work at any particular point, although goodness knows what's going to happen in the next months and years around that. But I do see, helping people as individuals and also in groups learn how to do these things for themselves, so that they don't have to rely on others to come in and do it for them.
Cool. John, obviously it's becoming nighttime where you are there. Is there a light that you can pop on?
Yeah. Is that one good or too bright?
It's a bit bright, but I don't know.
That one better?
That looks better. That looks better. That's working. Okay. So, look, you're leading me on, with the questioning there beautifully. You're identifying these organisations, and they'll have on the vision board, they'll have let's cooperate and collaborate with one another. And the first thing that they'll do is they'll enforce or reinforce a hierarchy. So talk a little bit more about an alternate model to a hierarchical structure.
Yeah, there are models. I think that the way that I've thought about it, though, just in terms of seeing what's possible, is that without enough maturity to really, and I think a lot of it is emotional maturity, actually, for people to be able to accept what they hear from one another, to take ownership of themselves and be really self-responsible, and to give one another, consideration. It's very hard to have anything but a hierarchical model. Unfortunately, the hierarchical kind of models keep them in place, because a lot of people are way more comfortable to be told what to do. Actually, one of the guys who has put this into practice, it's a really unlikely guy. You may have heard of the book Turn the Ship Around by a guy named David Marquet. And he was a US nuclear submarine commander. And while he retained the ultimate control on the ship, which was to push the button if a nuclear weapon was ever to be launched. Everything else he turned back to his chiefs and their officers and so on to be responsible for their own pieces. So in some respects, he's demonstrated a good example of how a much more self-responsible, generating collaboration, although it's in a hugely hierarchical system, and what could be more hierarchical than the US military? Yeah. So these things are possible, but it does take almost a really inspired leader to hold everyone, including themselves, to that, because the temptation at the drop of a hat, when things go just slightly wrong, will become a little bit hard to go back to, oh, you just tell me what to do and I'll do it. This is too hard, is so there. Yeah.
So fundamentally, is this stuff actually coming out of our culture? Is it the way that we're trained? Are there, examples of other ways of approaching this, or is it just a generalized human foible, if you like? Is that what we're looking at? What are we looking at?
Well, I think a lot of it is around our sort of animal state, our unconscious state is very much around, win-lose, good, bad, I like it, I don't. And because of that win-lose one, and because, this is my view, and because most people are unconscious most of the time, then, to have, the thing about winning and losing, being in control or being controlled, I think that's why it happens. Okay. So I think to have it different on a mass scale is going to take a big shift in consciousness.
Well, that's the next thing we want to talk about is what are you seeing in the community? Like, obviously there's this particular coronavirus, stuff going on at the moment, but that's probably a symptom of the wider structure anyway. What are you actually seeing when you get in your helicopter and you look down? What are you seeing
right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, right now I think it's, everything, it is like the world has stopped. The human aspect of the world has stopped. Life as we know it, globally, for the human race has pushed the stop button, and that's a really unusual thing to happen. Even in major events like World War I or World War II or whatever, which our fathers have talked to us about World War II and so on, we know a bit about it. A lot of parts of the world carried on regardless, but in this case, it's like the whole planet, in terms of the human aspect of it, has had to take a big pause. So that's a really unusual thing, and I guess, look, I'm looking at it really hopefully, and I'm really interested to see what's going to happen and how this is going to play out. What I see at the moment, unfortunately, is that in that win-lose, good-bad sort of thing, this is all bad. It's all being portrayed as bad, and so people are really scared. So it's like rather than, racing around being identified with consuming more and getting what I want, and which is what mass advertising and marketing has done for us, consumerism. The focus has shifted from that to the fear kind of aspect of it all. You know, people buying up all the flour in supermarkets and toilet paper and this kind of stuff. It's ridiculous. So that's what I see at the moment, is like, for some reason, and some of it may be human manufactured reasons, I don't know, or it's being played through them anyway. The whole planet in terms of human life is stopped, and there's a mass of fear. Like the main kind of vibration would be fear. That helps out people who like the kind of opposite end of fear, which is dominance, because they get more control. And some people will be liking that. I think our Prime Minister does a really good job of trying to be considerate in these situations and lead by cooperating. She kind of has to, in a way, because of the MMP system here. But I think she's sincere around it. So we've got an interesting little kind of microcosm of it here in New Zealand. But that's how I see the kind of bigger picture thing around it. How this is going to play out, I hear a lot of people saying, when's the lockdown going to finish so we can get back to normal? Well, things never go back to normal. Forget it. You know, there's going to be some whole, what this is going to transition into new ways. It's possible that the banking system and the financial systems and economic systems all get turned on their ear. It could, because it's like the bottom's dropped out of it all. So I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't either. I don't know. But I agree with you. It's extremely unlikely that you know, the economic situation won't be pretty severe, and so therefore, you know, economic change will have to occur. Sociological change as well. So, yeah. What would you like? You know, you're talking about fear. And we did have a conversation about these different fears that I observe. So obviously there's a fear of the body, so themselves or somebody else getting sick.
Yeah.
Fear of money. So, you know, my security stuff, you know, is going on. I see there's a really big, powerful fear around, you know, our leadership is inadequate. And you know, you're talking very kindly of the New Zealand leadership, that they're doing pretty well in the situation. But generally speaking, people are very concerned about, you know, are we actually being led properly? And, you know, they see the global news and that type of thing. And then there's a sort of a fear around, you know, that I've been abandoned. So it could be viewed as like, my parents are no longer looking after us. So like the company's not looking after us, the government's not looking after us. Or it could be, you know, that my God has abandoned me. And that sense of being abandoned, the fear of it, you know, strikes me as being quite extraordinary. There's a couple of others in there as well, but I just wonder if you know, could talk a little bit about, you know, the fear, because you're just recognizing it as being a huge thing. Are those things resonant for you, or are there other things that you would observe?
I think those things that you've talked through, the fear of abandonment one that you're terming, that's kind of interesting, because as we were speaking before, given that our unconscious state and our comfort zone, how we're trained to be and conditioned to be, is told what to do or tell someone else what to do, i.e. either be in control or follow someone who's got the control. You know, and like you were saying, the fear that a lot of leaders don't actually know what they're doing at the moment. You know, it's going to throw a lot of people into a lot of uncertainty and wind up a lot of anxiety around that. And I think that is what's happening, as well as the anxiety around my body, my home and possessions, my job, you know, my family, my life, my investments.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. So what guidance would you have for people at the moment? So, you know, what things could people, you know, be doing right now that would make a difference for them?
Well, there's no better time than learning how to think more broadly, and try to generate, you know, and extend one's understanding. So rather than just think narrowly around my little patch and what I'm being told by, you know, TV1 News or TV3 News or whatever, is to start asking some questions. Exercise your exploration. What is going on? What am I seeing? Why would this be happening? How's it going to play out? What would be some logical steps to take out of lockdown? You know, just start inquiring more. It may be more common in the younger generation. Our daughter, who's a primary school teacher, has told us that the inquiry-based sort of way of learning is much more common practice in primary schools nowadays in New Zealand, whereas the way that we were taught was, here's the information you need, give it back to me in the way that I've given you, and you'll pass. And don't inquire outside of that, because we don't want that. It's inefficient. So that's one thing, is start to be more explorative. Ask questions, and not just, is it this, is it that, closed questions. Ask explorative questions. Learn how to do that if you don't know how. Start to expand your, you know, your kind of possibilities, because what we're going to need going out of some big major stop like this is other possibilities than we had before. And if people want to say in that and don't want to just be victims, then start talking about it, start thinking about it, start discussing about it, because otherwise we'll just have someone else's version of it shoved at us again. So I think there's a lot that people could be doing in the time that we have, if our jobs have largely gone down the tubes. And you know, I see a lot of people around our area walking and so on. I mean, there's a lot of people who don't have much if any work on, that kind of thing. So use the time. And I think, as well as that the practices, those really fundamental practices of becoming more mindful and present in yourself, and starting to understand yourself better, and how you think, and what you feel, and how you behave, and what your senses are telling you. So become more observant. Those are the sorts of things. I think it's very basic. I think it's very basic and very simple.
Very basic and very simple, but very challenging to maintain, of course.
Yeah.
One of the questions I can hear people asking as they're hearing you is that all this is very intellect based, or the way that it will be interpreted, at least. Anyway, I just want to be clear about this. So, you know, for most people, they're saying our problem as a human race at the moment is we think too much. We're doing too much thinking, and what we need to do is, you know, more of this heart stuff. And what you're identifying here is it's kind of a logic basis, but it's a logic basis with heart in it. Yeah. So I just wonder if you could just sort of just expand that a little bit, so that people can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So in the situation we're in right now, it's not just about what's going on, so what do we need to do? It's also what's going on, and who who's being affected in what way here and what do they need. So it's the combination of what needs doing and who needs what. And I think when we start to consider things from those perspectives, yes, there is a lot of practical stuff and there's ideas around how those things could be done, which brings in some intellect as well as that practical kind of gut and moving, how we'd move to get things done. And the who needs what forces us to consider people other than just ourselves and to look around and say, well, that person over there, what do they need? And to actually understand or to try and connect with them and get a sense of, well, actually, they're feeling really anxious at the moment, so what could I do for them? So yeah, while it might sound like an intellectual approach, it's actually trying to draw on all of our intelligences. Cool. And, starting off with those really basic things of what needs doing, but resisting going straight into solution mode, which is how we're trained, and just start doing stuff because it makes me feel better, is also to stop as well, pause before I rip into that. Well, hang on, so who else is around? What do they need? Who needs what? And then sometimes there's almost a bit of a clash between what needs doing and who needs what. Sometimes, something needs fixing, but actually someone needs some emotional attention before you're going to be able to do that. So then you've got to make some decisions. And that's where that rationalising piece comes in of, okay, so we've got a number of options here. Which one is going to give us the best bang for buck right now, kind of thing? Be the most effective right now. None of them are 100%. It's just like which one is going to be the most, effective.
Very good, very good. John, is there other things that you would like to share, around the times and the change and the shift and so on? Is there other things, or if you feel as though you've, sort of explored those things, picture yourself that you've got a nice mount that you could stand on and you can preach to the world. What would your message be? So I'd love to hear that.
Well, one thing is that, in whatever seems to be adverse, there's always opportunity. So while this may seem like a massive challenge which it is, let's acknowledge it for what it is. What are the opportunities here? What is possible for us as humanity on the planet, the human race? How could we create together a more effective and a more considerate way of living together? What could our societies be like if they're going to be different, and just in terms of the way that we interact and behave? Given that we've put the production of a whole lot of stuff on hold at the moment because it's not essential, what sort of stuff do we want? What sort of stuff do we need? How can we? I think there's just, that would be my kind of message from the Mount, is that be of good cheer, to coin that old one. There's huge possibilities open for us. We just don't know what they are, how they're going to unfold. But now's a time where everyone has the possibility of kicking in something towards what that collective future could be. So don't hold back. Okay. Don't disappear into Netflix.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, don't disappear into Netflix. Well, John, thank you. Thank you. That's really wonderful talking to you, and I'm sure there's many things that will be useful for people in there. And you know, we'll have ways that people can reach out to you, and you know, if they've got questions specifically for you.
Yeah, sure.
And you know, go well with your journey. And you know, I hope that you're able to, you know, reach those places that you're talking about where you get some real clarity around what actually is needed. And I think that's tremendous what you're drawing to everybody's attention. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you.